What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. Today, we're going to be looking at one of the older trades that we will discuss in the trade breakdown series. This is going to be the original Michael Young trade, which occurred on July 19th in the year 2000. So this is a long time ago. This is over 20 years ago when this trade occurred. But it actually, believe it or not, still had some relevance for a few years. Really, there's still some players involved in this trade that are playing. So, without further ado, we'll jump into this. So, the original trade was between the Texas Rangers, who acquired second baseman Michael Young, and relief pitcher Darwin Kubelin from Toronto in exchange for a starting pitcher named Esteban Loaiza. So, how did this trade work out? Of course, as always, we start with the team that acquires the player and the title, the Texas Rangers. And this is one of the more lopsided trades of the 21st century at this point in time, which is kind of crazy to say that, it occurred 20 years ago. But, yeah, so Michael Young was a key piece of the Rangers for 13 seasons. Now, during his time in Texas, he had a career average of 0.301. So that means, if he was at bat 1,000 times, if he recorded 1,000 plate appearances, so that does not include times that he was walked or reached on error, he would get on base with a hit 301 out of those 1,000 times. Again, that does not include walks or errors or hit by pitches for that matter. So that's pretty impressive. He was a 7-time All-Star in Texas, and his number is actually retired by the Texas Rangers. So pretty impressive. He holds multiple team records, and he actually held even more before he was traded after the 2012 season, before 2013. But Michael Young is definitely a face of their franchise. He's a possible candidate for the Hall of Fame, but it won't be for years to come. Because while he is retired at this point in time, he's not going to be a Hall of Famer for a while. You're talking about a Veterans Committee 30, 40 years down the road from now. But when they traded him to the Phillies in exchange for a pair of pitchers in prospect pitcher Luis Alberto Manila and relief pitcher Josh Lindblom. Now, Lindblom, as we know, is still playing today in the league, and he really just bounced around the minors, through AAA and the majors. He spent a little bit of time in Texas before he himself was traded. Now, he was traded alongside outfielder Craig Gentry to the Oakland Athletics in exchange for a pair of outfielders in Christopher Bosick and Michael Choice. So Bosick, he spent a year in the minors before he himself was included in a trade alongside relief pitcher Abel de los Santos to the Washington Nationals in exchange for a pitcher Ross Detweiler. So Detweiler, while in Texas, he struggled over a half season, and he ends up getting designated for the assignment. Now we'll go back to this trade, and Michael Choice was he struggled over 1.5 seasons while on the Texas Rangers, and he ends up getting just released, designated for the assignment. Now, Luis Alberto Manila, he was actually one of the top prospects in the Phillies system at the time of this trade. He was a young, talented arm. And he only appeared in a few games, and then injuries just really got to him. And it just completely derailed his career, and he ends up getting waived. And he had a lot of promise, but injuries can derail a lot of young, promising careers. Unfortunately for Texas, that's what happened. Now, how did Esteban Loaiza do in Toronto? Well, he was a solid pitcher for 2.5 seasons before he walked from the team in free agency. So all in all, they gave up Michael Young for 2.5 seasons of a solid pitcher. Not a great trade for Toronto. Now, how did the 3 teams that traded with Texas do in their trades? We'll start with Philadelphia. And I remember when this trade happened, I was very excited. And this was the point where the Phillies dynasty was all but over, but they had one last hurrah. So they acquired Michael Young, and what Young ends up doing is he underachieves. He has one of the worst seasons of his career, but to be fair to him, the Phillies also had a horrible season. So Young basically served as a mentor for a lot of young players, including current San Francisco Giants player Darren Ruff, who really just loved working with Michael Young. And the Young, he himself ends up getting traded in late August to the Dodgers, as the Dodgers were competitive, and Young just basically at this point in his career, his last season, he wanted a ring. Unfortunately for him, he didn't get one. Now Oakland, so with Josh Lindblom, he gets designated for the assignment after an uneventful season, and as we know, he ends up going to Japan and does decent in Japan before coming back stateside, going to Milwaukee. As for Gentry, he had 2 injury-plagued seasons in Oakland's system, both in the minors and the majors, before getting designated for the assignment, but he was decent when he played. Last but not least, we have Washington, and Christopher Bosick. He did not play in the majors for Washington, and he ends up getting designated for the assignment, while Abel de los Santos, and he just ends up appearing in a pair of games for Washington before being waived. But that is the Michael Young trade. Who won the trade? It's pretty obvious that Texas wins this trade. They got a WAR of 23.7, which is crazy when you think about it because Michael Young himself was worth more than that. So trading Young actually hurt them more than anything. As for Toronto, they got a 3.7 WAR out of Loaiza. And then Philadelphia loses negative 1.1 WAR. Oakland gets a 1.4 out of their 2 players. And Washington gets an uneventful 0.0. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a great rest of your day.